Watch this daily, because the discipline your success demands is not built by force, but by what you allow to occupy your mind each day, unnoticed. Somewhere inside you, a quiet resistance is shaping your future before you ever act. You may believe the struggle is outside you. Circumstances, people, time. But the real conflict has always lived within. It begins the moment you wake and continues long after the world grows quiet. It is the unseen battle between the thought you choose and the thought that chooses you. Most people never notice it. They move through their days reacting, assuming their lack of discipline is a flaw in character, a weakness in will. Yet discipline does not begin in action. It begins in awareness. Until you see what is happening inside your own mind, effort will always feel heavy, and consistency will feel unnatural. There is a voice in you that seeks comfort. It whispers delay. It urges ease. It reminds you of yesterday's fatigue and tomorrow's uncertainty. And there is another voice, quieter but firmer, that calls you toward order, toward growth, toward becoming more than you have been. Discipline is not the silencing of the first voice. It is the strengthening of the second. You were conditioned long before you chose consciously, by repetition, by observation, by what you heard, accepted, and repeated internally. The mind learned patterns before you learned intention, and now those patterns play automatically, shaping your behavior while you wonder why change feels so difficult. This is why discipline feels like resistance. You are not fighting the task. You are confronting an old mental agreement, an agreement that says effort is optional, that comfort is priority, that consistency can wait. Until that agreement is seen, it remains in control. Every day, your thoughts form a quiet environment within you. That environment either supports order or invites chaos. And like any environment, it influences what can grow there. If the soil is scattered, no structure can stand. If the inner world is disordered, no outer success will last. The most dangerous conditioning is the kind you don't question. The assumption that motivation must come before action. The belief that discipline is a personality trait rather than a practiced state of mind. These ideas lodge themselves deep, not as facts, but as feelings. And feelings left unexamined become commands. Awareness changes this. The moment you observe your own thinking without judgment, something shifts. You begin to see that your thoughts are not orders, they are suggestions. Repeated often enough, they feel like truth. But truth does not need repetition to exist. Only belief does. This is where the unseen battle takes place. Not when you stand before a task, but when the thought of the task first arises. The mind decides long before the body moves. Discipline is simply the habit of deciding correctly more often than not. You are not undisciplined. You are unconsciously disciplined in a direction that does not serve you. The same mental power that leads you away from effort can be redirected toward mastery. But redirection requires sight. You cannot change or you refuse to notice. The mind prefers the familiar, even when the familiar limits you, even when it costs you the future you quietly desire. This is why success demands discipline, not as punishment, but as alignment. Alignment between what you say you want and what you consistently think. The first step is not doing more. It is seeing more, seeing how often your attention drifts, seeing how quickly doubt speaks, seeing how easily comfort negotiates your commitments. These observations are not meant to shame you. They are meant to free, because the moment you realize that your inner world is shaping your outer results, responsibility returns to its rightful place, not as pressure, but as power. You are no longer at the mercy of moods or circumstances. You are standing at the threshold of self-command. This awareness is quiet. It does not announce itself. But once it arrives, it never fully leaves. You begin to sense that every thought has weight, every inner conversation has direction, and discipline is no longer something you chase. It becomes something you cultivate from within. Once awareness awakens, you begin to notice patterns that were always there. The same thoughts arriving at the same moments, the same inner reactions to challenge, effort, delay. What once felt random now reveals a quiet order, and that order has been shaping you for years. The mind learns through repetition, not through reason. Whatever you think most often, especially when emotion is present, sinks beneath the surface and takes root. The subconscious does not argue. It accepts, it records, it obeys, and then it expresses what it has been given through habit and behavior. This is why discipline cannot be forced from the outside. You may push yourself for a time. You may rely on urgency or pressure. But unless the inner pattern changes, the old rhythm returns. The subconscious always pulls you back to what feels normal, even when normal limits you. Every silent thought is a vote for the person you are becoming, and most of those votes are cast without awareness. A quiet excuse repeated daily becomes a belief. A belief becomes a reflex, and a reflex becomes a lifestyle you later call fate. You begin to see how often you rehearse hesitation, how frequently you imagine rest before effort, how quickly the mind searches for relief when structure is required. These are not moral failures. They are practiced thoughts, and practiced thoughts become practiced lives. The subconscious responds to dominance, not truth. The most repeated idea becomes law within you. This is why you can know what to do and still not do it. Knowledge alone does not command action. Only deeply impressed belief does, and belief is built the same way habits are built. Quietly, consistently, without drama. Each time you think a thought, you strengthen its path. Each time you allow it to pass unchallenged, you deepen its authority. This is why watching something daily matters, not for information, but for impression. The mind becomes what it repeatedly consumes, not just through words, but through feeling, through tone, through the emotional atmosphere you expose yourself to. If your inner dialogue is filled with delay, discipline will feel foreign. If it is filled with certainty, discipline feels natural. The difference is not willpower. It is programming. You are always being programmed by your environment, by your habits, by what you allow into your attention. Silence does not protect you. The absence of conscious input only allows unconscious patterns to continue unchecked. Repetition is the great sculptor of identity. The thought you revisit becomes familiar. The familiar becomes comfortable, and comfort becomes preference. This is how character is formed without decision. But once you see this, you gain leverage. You realize that every deliberate repetition is an act of self-authorship. You are no longer hoping discipline will arrive. You are installing it thought by thought. This is not about fighting negative thoughts. Resistance gives them energy. This is about replacing them through dominance, introducing a stronger, calmer, more ordered inner voice, one that speaks with consistency, not force. The subconscious responds to what you return to, again and again, without negotiation. When you repeatedly align your inner dialogue with structure, effort begins to feel less like sacrifice and more like identity. You stop asking how to be disciplined. You start becoming someone who expects discipline from themselves, not harshly, not emotionally, but as a quiet standard. This is the silent programming that determines destiny. Not grand decisions, but small, repeated mental agreements. And the moment you take responsibility for those agreements, the future begins to reorganize itself around you.